Captain Chris driving. Two airplanes that were stacked up and anchored down with these concrete pillars. We set those airplanes down here. Oh, here's some of those pillars on the starboard also.
Daddy.
So as I was saying, we had two airplanes down on these pillars, and we set those here in the spring of '92. But unfortunately, 6 months later, in the fall, Hurricane Iniki came through, and it was so powerful that the subsurface currents threw the airplanes out to deeper water. We're actually going to go visit where they got dropped by the hurricanes, but in the meantime, I'd just like to point this out. There's also a lot of pufferfish in this area near these pilings. There's a couple dozen of them on port side right now.
Those are pufferfish.
Oh, yeah.
It looks like a tuna.
So other than those pilings, this area that we know on top of something. So we normally come down just outside of these pilings and move across them, and now we're headed to our first reef site, which is going to be what we call our Hawaiian Pyramids. There's actually going to be 6 of them, right? So you guys got a visitor on the starboard side, right?
We like you, alright?
In this area. Yeah, he's just going up there. Yeah, you'll see 2 types of those jacks out here. First of all, you got those bluefin trevally, the ones you just saw right here with the bright fluorescent blue on their top side. And then you'll see ones that are a little bigger. I think that one down there might be is a giant trevally. If that's a giant trevally, it's actually a smaller one of the species. They'll get much bigger. Right behind it on the starboard deck. So, and those are kind of a medium-sized species, and they don't like anyone near their food sources, so they'll actually charge scuba divers, sharks, and even their submarines sometimes. They'll charge the bottom just to try to intimidate us away. And other than the submarine, they're very successful because their bodies are pretty much solid muscle and bone. They've been known to break the ribs of scuba divers, and they'll even charge the sharks in their gills and chase them away from the reefs. Big fishies out there.
I think the inferences I would imagine are like things like the trends that you noticed or like certain regions.
Oh yeah, there's a whole bunch of those transvali up there swimming around. This is not their normal area. I wonder what they're doing over here. They figured out where we start. They're trying to intimidate us in the beginning.
I know, but he's not sad.
So these look like they're probably between maybe 80 to 90 pounds. The largest one of these ever caught was actually 191 pounds off the coast of Maui. But aside from those, if you're just coming down in between now, you see the Hawaiian Pyramids, and you can see why they call them that with their pyramid shape. And these are one of our first reefs placed down here, and they were actually designed by students, marine biology students at the University of Hawaii, Noah. The reason for that, for the project, Hawaii is actually not a natural beach. It's all imported sand. It was a man-made beach. So most of the sand you see out here is erosion, and it covered up the old reef life that was here more than 100 years ago. Oh, there's a really big moray eel head sticking out of the camera on the starboard.
Oh yeah.
Oh, the yellow.
Oh, that was cool. I never seen moray here either. So as I was saying, most of the sand you see here is actually erosion from Waikiki as an artificial beach, and it covered up a lot of the ancient corals that were here. So once we kind of learned more throughout the 20th century about the ocean life, we decided to try to start rejuvenating the area. I mean we as in humanity. So some of the students at As we get to some of our other reefs, you'll see that the steel and lava rock actually provide kind of one of the best substrates for growing the corals on. Also, you see all this Hawaiian seagrass out here. That's actually one large organism. Every bit of grass there is actually connected beneath the surface. And that is one of the primary sources of food for the Hawaiian green sea turtle. And as the adult Hawaiian green sea turtle eats that grass, the green pigments actually build up in the sea turtle's body fat, and that's what gives it its color. Now, most of the rest of our reefs are going to show one side or the other, but we will always do a 180-degree turn to go back and show the other side. With that in mind, over here on port, you're now coming into view are what we call our Japanese reefs. I think they just look like giant wine rags, but our fish out here treat them kind of like... So these were actually donated to us from the Asahi Chemical Corporation. That's usually grown on artificial reefs just like this.
You want to look over here, bud?
There's no seaweed on ours because the waters of Hawaii are too warm and salty to grow seaweed. But they make a great base for coral and a habitat for the fish. And speaking of which, usually on this one here, or nearby this one, remember that giant gray fish we saw earlier that I mentioned, the giant trevally? They tend to use this area here as a nursery, so you'll often see schools of children of that species spun around here. No, they're still bigger than that. You can zoom out pretty big. Looks like they haven't done for the day, but they don't have it there. But there's a unicorn fish right there. See the horn on his head? It looks like Gil from Finding Nemo. Yeah. Yeah, that's basically his Hawaiian cousin species. So we're going to come back past those reefs on the other side in just a moment. But first I'd like to point out, if you notice there's some ropes coming off the end of the reef over here, keep an eye out throughout the dive. You'll see rope markers like that and cinder blocks all over the dive site. Those are actually used as a navigation system. Literally a map on the ocean floor for our pilots. There's no GPS down here, there's no radio waves. If you're looking at your phone right now, there's no signal. Right, so the only way we can navigate is with visual markers like that. Years ago, give or take 100,000 years. Back when Oahu was the newest Hawaiian island and Maui and Big Island didn't exist yet. Oh, there's 2 more islands. They're often traveling in pairs like that. So what I like to point out here is, well, first of all, let me mention, this is a place we can sometimes see eels, sea stars, sea cucumbers, and obviously a variety of coral. I see a lot of low coral and cauliflower coral in this area. And as we approach the end out here, almost straight down from my window now, but coming along the starboard side, is a giant antler coral right where the reef meets the sand.
Yeah. See?
What I like to point out here is you see how there's kind of an invisible jagged line where the heavy coral reef stops and just becomes lava rock again? That's basically about the deepest the coral can
Leopard shark, a mythical leopard shark that killed his friend.
Oh, okay, nice. And that's like, actually my dad and I were just talking about that movie this morning.
It deserves a second viewing if you didn't watch it.
It's, my dad and I were talking about how both of us fell asleep 15 minutes in because we tried to start it at like midnight.
Pacing, yeah. Give it a second chance. I promise you'll like it.
But it's funny that it happened twice.
It's a long movie and the pacing is definitely slow. It has moments.
But like all Wes Anderson movies are like that. I love, I think Grand Budapest might have been my first.
You had a question about the type of eel we saw with pyramids? That's a moray eel. We do see them usually a couple times a day, but I've never seen one at that site, so that was unusual.
The French
More often
directed?
than not, we see them hanging out in the polyethylene.
It's, I think it hasn't come out yet, but it's.
And there's also one
it
that's
looks
sometimes
really
glitched
good.
in one of the airplane wings, one of the engine parts.
It's right now.
Is it that one?
So
Okay,
we
yeah.
left that site moment.
Cool.
Oh, look, there's fish with horns, with unicorn horns, right in the middle of the reef. Oh, wow. Look at all the ancient fish.
So were these come from Asahi, which I'm familiar with their beer.
Yeah, that's right.
Were these something that they utilized to store barrels of beer?
No, I think they're purely designed.
They're made for this?
Yeah, they were donated by them.
They very much look Japanese in a lot of regards. What are the, do you know what they're
There's
made
like
of?
there's different styles, so you can tell they're probably doing some research into like
Yeah.
which structures
Yeah, totally. Completely.
This one seems to be doing the best.
Successful.
The eagle, yeah.
The Matrix.
Another fish that people really like is this zebra striped one with the long fin coming up with the dorsal fin. It's like a pennant shape. That's a pennant butterfly fish.
You're good.
That's so pretty.
So he looks a lot like the Moorish idol, but you notice the Moorish, the pennant butterfly fish is usually seen giant smooth like that. Whereas the Moorish idols, they've only got 4 stripes total, and they're much thicker stripes. And the fish is a little bigger, and the pennant is shorter. Oh, actually, it's just, and back, 30, 40 years ago.
Oh, there's a shark.
Oh yeah, there's a white tip reef shark over here on the starboard, right under the wings there.
I didn't want to be shellfish.
Yeah, see, and if you notice, he's laying still but pumping his mouth open and closed. They're one of only like 3 species of shark that can continue to breathe without moving their gills. So we can sit down there and take a nap. And the reason they like to hide under our wings is, remember I mentioned those giant trevally are kind of like really aggressive bullies?
Wow.
The wing kind of lets the shark sleep in peace because it's harder for the fish to charge down there. So even though he's a shark, he is not the head of he's not the apex predator down here. That's about 10%. So pretty close to the size he looks like to you right there. I couldn't see him from this angle. So we have another wing coming up here on the port side. Let's see if there's another shark or not. Sometimes there is.
Sorry. Oh, it's okay. Careful, Ozzy. Here, just look out the window, okay?
Was a
See the
World War
turtle?
II era Navy vessel, and Wyobe's yarn oil, so this was a refueling ship. And you can see the gun turret here actually just collapsed about a year and a half ago. That's a big brown disc you see.
That's huge.
March of last year, on the start of the pandemic, that.
You haven't seen yet, though. Oh, those are pretty. This is look this way and see the big turtles, okay?
Oh wow, just coming into view on starboard here, a group of Howler's Barracuda just swam out from underneath us. That's one of the smallest species and only schooling species of Barracuda. Normally we only see them shimmering from a distance as they move in the light, but they came out really close, came right underneath the submarine there. Our turtle friend is still hanging out here. Look at him, he's a minute while they're napping on the ship.
It's a big turtle, huh? Bigger than you.
At our hotel.
Chemical Corporation. This used to be a fishing vessel, but then when longline fishing was outlawed, it was repurposed as a cargo vessel. But it caught fire while transporting cargo south of the Big Island. And they couldn't get the fire under control with just their fire suppression equipment, so they ended up cracking open their cargo, which was 100-gallon barrel cans, and it became a big problem for the state because it was abandoned by the owner. When it sunk finally at the docks, it became state property. And we had heard about this boat, so we went to talk to the state. And we offered to take it off the state's hands. They said, sure, we'll sell it to you. We're like, how much? They said, we'll give it to you for $1. So we actually bought this entire ship for $1, and then we cleaned it up. But that cleanup and sinking process cost us about another $360,000. But now it went from being burnt out teriyaki boat. They used to do longline fishing, and now it's a really healthy reef.
Bro, I get to see that ship over there.
The way I understand it is you pick up a lot more than just what you're trying to catch. When you drag, like
Here it is.
the question was why is the longline fishing bad? Because they drag these huge, like hundreds of feet.
Focused on the glass, damn.
We're next to it in the harbor. So the algae that goes on the side is their food source, and the submarine itself is their protection. So they drive around the little spaces that you can't see from inside, but like in between our air tanks, stuff like that. It's just shelters so they can't get attacked. They've been with the sub every day since they were born about 3 years ago. Yeah.
What is it here?
Another fish that you can see a bunch of, you see the yellow fish with the blue stripes on the side? Yeah. Those are blue striped snapper, and they're actually from Tahiti and considered an invasive species here. I'm sure you guys have heard about how Hawaii brought in the mongoose to control the rat population, and it didn't really work.
Yeah.
Something similar happened with the blue striped snapper here. There was red snapper that was already an invasive species, so they bought, I can't talk today, they brought the blue striped snapper in to basically outcompete and force the red snapper out. And that worked, but no one fishes for the blue stripe because they don't taste very good and they don't have any natural predators here.
That's
so they
great
just
coral
they
right
do
there.
replace the red snapper.
Yeah,
So same problem, different species.
When can we learn?
Oh, unicorn rope portal.
You can tell how clear the water is today, given that you can still see them. Oh, they're up. I just saw one of their tails up top.
No, they're running about that soon. Big fish right there.
There's something tied to the ship that reaches the top of the water.
Alright, so we do have 2 dolphins right above the submarine just hanging out in this area. I'm going to stay low, so if they show up at the pilot's viewport, maybe you guys can see them and call them out. I hope you guys enjoyed this. This never happens. This is awesome.
Watch them see their fins. Watch them there. You see it?
You're splashing.
Right where the splashes are, right in front. See it?
Looking, they might come out.
Alright guys, time to board folks. If you haven't been to the submarine, it is time to board your sub ride. If you're in the upper deck, please make your way down to the main deck. Again, please have your mask on and to board together.
Oh my god, dolphins. They're having so much fun. Today, like, they saw the submarine too, you know?
Hawaiian Spinner Dolphins, this is not included in the tour. And it's going to be a little bit extra here. But for you folks, since you're some crowd, it is a free.
Oh my gosh.
Wow!
Yeah, there's nothing. Look, you see that?